Welcome to Thunder Nerds. I'm Brian Hinton.
I'm Jenell Pizarro.
And I am Frederick Philip von Weiss, and thank you for consuming the Thunder Nerds, a conversation with the people behind the technology that love what they do.
And do tech good.
Pow! Boom! Yeah. How's it going, everybody?
Great,
Glad
great.
everybody's with us again. Hey, just want to quickly say that if you are going to be in the St. Pete area around
Florida.
St. Pete, Florida. Let me specify. Thank you, Brian. Around the 26th, 27th, we're going to be podcasting live at the Front End Design Conference. Brian, do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's been, I think it's the 10-year anniversary. Correct me if either one of you know.
Yeah.
And Chris Corrier's going to be there, Tim Smith. We've gone there a couple times just to actually participate. It's a great conference, great talks. Great speakers, and we're going to be interviewing a lot of the speakers live, so it's going to be awesome. You can come see us if you're there, and come talk to us.
Yeah, Jenell Pizarro was actually speaking at the very last one, and we'll welcome her again as a guest co-host. Jenell, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Love it.
Thank you. And let's go ahead and get our guests in here. We have a couple of Joes we got from the host of the In Reality podcast, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We have Joe Bardi and Joe Johnson. Welcome, Joes.
Thank you.
Hey,
thanks for having us.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being on the show with us. How you guys doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Sunday's always good.
And I'm sunburned, and that's enough.
We do have to get into that story. That's going to be great.
I missed something.
He's sunburned.
Sunburned. There's a story there. How he got sunburned. Come on, keep up, Brian.
There has to be.
Yeah,
it's called the sun.
So today we're going to be talking a little bit about VR, AR, mixed reality, and we'll define what those things are. But let's get into a little bit of who you guys are. Maybe Joe, you could start.
Well, since Joe Bardi goes before me on the stand-up, you're up, buddy.
Oh, wow. Okay. So we work for a company called Marxent that makes augmented reality and virtual reality solutions for retailers. And so some people we've worked with are like Macy's and Target and Office Depot, and they're all experimenting with different ways to use a whole host of new technologies and new sort of sales strategies to appeal to customers, because I don't know how much you guys follow retail or whatever, but retail is kind of struggling. Lots of major companies are closing locations. There's a glut of sales space. It's there's just these companies have all of this property, and it's expensive to keep, and they just can't do it anymore. But one of the problems is that when you close stores, you also lose online sales in that area. It's like you go out of sight, out of mind. And then Amazon sort of takes over. And so these companies are looking for ways to have much smaller square footage, instead of a 20,000 square foot store, a 2,000 square foot store, and yet still be able to show the same number of products without having to have everything on hand. And they see 3D visualization as a way that's going to happen. And you're already seeing a little bit of that with AR, especially IKEA, the IKEA Place app, which made sort of headlines back when iOS 11 came out in September.
Yeah, that's an awesome app. For people who don't know what it is, he's talking about ARKit for our iOS, and basically you can point in a room and position IKEA furniture and things in the room and see what it look like. It's awesome. But go on, Joe. Sorry.
Yeah, no. That's exactly it. And that was, so we make a variation on that as well. These companies are sort of figuring it out right now, and the technology that powers a lot of these things up until now has still been sort of coming of age, and with sort of like the maturity of cloud services, you're able to do 3D products in lots of different places in lots of different ways in like an actually cost-effective way, which is what sort of all of these big companies have been waiting for. And this feels like the moment where that change is actually going to take place, because you have this whole separate real estate issue also driving sort of their future plans.
And then some more backstory for that. So it's not like we just sort of landed there first thing. The company's been around for about 6 years. And when we got started, the idea was that we were going to sort of combine the name of the company, Marxent, is marketing plus entertainment or marketing times entertainment. The idea was going to be that we were just going to leverage AR and VR to do something interesting. We weren't exactly sure what that was going to be. And as time has gone on, we found a niche, or at least the company found a niche, servicing like high consideration products, stuff that you guys want to play with and look at before you buy it, like furniture. As a matter of fact, I just went down to IKEA, bought some furniture the other day, and I was in the store, and I was like, man, I really wish I had access to our apps, because I could get measurements from my room. I'd figure out what it all looked like. That's not a joke. I'm not BSing you. That's real. I was like, man, I kind of wish they had what we have. So that's the gist of what we do. Now, how we met was Joe Bardi got hired. I don't know. Has it been 10 years now? How long have we worked together?
It's 2 years, but it definitely feels like 10.
It feels like eternity, is what it feels like.
Jeez.
In a good way.
In the best way possible. We're teasing in the best way possible.
Yeah. So we sit across from each other at the office, and we spend a lot of time. Mostly, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but I'm going to do it anyway. We do a lot of bullshitting, so that's what we do.
Yeah. Don't fucking swear, no.
Got it.
Okay. Good to know.
Show.
Yeah. No, we're definitely the office entertainment at various points, just with banter. That we can't help ourselves.
I'm a supreme physical comedian, but you're not going to get that here.
Oh, physical comedian. Damn. See, I want to say that.
See, yeah, exactly.
That.
It's subtle. It's subtle. You have to do it. You have to do it in person. It's all gestures and looks.
Yeah, I get that. All right.
No, we're going to sit in silence until you do something funny.
You'll be waiting a long time. I don't do it
an hour.
Hey, I wanted to ask you a question that I think a lot of people have trouble comprehending. We all understand what virtual reality is and what augmented reality is, but there's another term that people bring up a lot of times is mixed reality. Do you mind?
Right, I got it. I got this one.
All right.
Well, wait, hold on. Wait, before Joe goes, Joe can answer it, then I'm going to answer it too, because the fact like we could probably have 10 different answers to this particular question. But Joe, go ahead.
I'm going to provide go ahead.
Before you jump into that, could you get Frederick says that everyone knows. Can you give like a brief synopsis of AR and VR? Because a lot of our listeners may not actually know.
Great point, Brian. Yeah.
Okay, so it's an interesting semantics piece. Virtual reality is any reality that is not objective, consensual reality. That includes objects overlaid on reality. Those are elements of virtual reality. Augmented reality nominally is anything that interacts with our world in a digital space. So you could use something as just as an example, an augmented reality projection or object. You're looking through a phone or a pair of headsets, and let's say I'm looking at a product and I want to know how much it costs, and I give a command or whatever that may be, subvocal, it doesn't matter, and it brings up a digital readout that nobody else can see, but I can, or other people can see it. It doesn't really matter. That is what people think of when they think of augmented reality. Now, Joe is going to fill in some gaps in the mixed reality definition, but my definition of mixed reality is generally any combination of this world and a digital world. That's and it's obviously it's really broad, but mixed reality I think is the most appropriate term for it because everything else is sort of short, in my opinion. Go ahead, Joe. What do you got?
So I've done a whole bunch of talking to this guy. We have Ken Mosier, Dr. Ken Mosier, PhD, who works at Marxent, and he studied in Japan with like the guy who invented augmented reality. And I don't want to do Ken's bio because I'll totally screw it up. But Ken has a very scientific answer for this question, which is that there's a reality continuum, basically. And on the one end is reality as we're experiencing it right now, wherever you're sitting, real reality. And on the other end is full virtual reality, the Matrix, if you will. You are in it. You have no idea you're in it. It's completely immersive. And everything else on that spectrum is mixed reality. The difference between it's the mixing of real reality and virtual reality. So in mixed reality, to me, I know. I feel like Microsoft really pushed the term a lot with the HoloLens as a way to differentiate the HoloLens from all of the other sort of augmented reality stuff was out, which was legitimate. Yeah, like they had built a thing that was sort of heads and tails above most other augmented reality solutions at that very moment in time. So it made sense to me that they wanted to differentiate themselves and get away from that term. But the fact of the matter was, to me, that's augmented reality. It's mixed reality. They're all sort of the same thing. There's also diminished reality, which
again, they'll just mix reality.
What is diminished reality?
So diminished reality is.
Okay. So diminished reality. Let's just for an example. There's a poster on my back wall.
It's like.
Uh-oh.
Go ahead, Joe.
We'll wait till we're ready.
Robot voice.
All right,
I think we're good.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Just as an example, you've got this poster, this Pulp Fiction poster up on my wall. Diminished reality is basically taking that out of the scene by using computer vision techniques.
Okay.
Yeah, or eliminating me from the scene.
Like an example would be people who want, like, I think there's an app on app iOS that you can change like the color of your walls or a wallpaper. So, is that diminished reality or is that
that's augmented reality?
Yeah. But you're removing pictures and
as soon as you're doing that, yeah.
This is where it gets confusing.
I'll give you something from a scene.
I'll give you the perfect example. So if you play with IKEA Place after this, or if you play with it before, one of the things I encountered was that what the app would read the couch that was sitting in my living room as a plane, and it would place the new couch on top of the old couch. Diminished reality will literally take the old couch out of the scene and fill in the picture with. It'll extrapolate what should actually be there based upon what the rest of the room looks like, and then you can place the new thing right on top of the couch, and your couch will be gone. Through the magic of diminished reality. So it's a way to, instead of adding stuff to the scene that you're seeing through your viewing window, whether it's a smartphone or whatever, it's a way to remove things that are real from that same scene as you're viewing it.
That was the clearest definition I've heard so far. That's great.
Thanks. I try.
Go ahead, Jenell. What were you saying?
I said I feel like that's what hoarders do in their mind. Like, that's not really there.
It's like that. They're more augmenting their reality than diminishing it. I think I can say that for sure.
I'm confused on the difference though between mixed reality and just augmented reality. Like they seem very.
You're not
similar.
Alone. Is how I would put that. I think that they're basically two. Again, there could be an argument about this. Whatever. They're basically two terms for the same thing. They are both describing the overlaying of 3D imagery into a real scene that you're viewing through a smartphone or glasses.
The little tiny difference is that with mixed reality is you could divest things from the scene. Is that the small part of the definition?
No, because that'll be again, that's the diminished reality portion, and that's really just another type of augmented reality. They're all a lot of them are. They are all just terms for basically the same thing. I feel like mixed reality at this point is more of a marketing term for augmented reality than anything else, because people don't like the word augmented. It's a longer word. What I think mixed is more punchy. I think bottom line that's what's happening.
Yeah, it's easy to say mixed reality.
But I want to augment my reality. I like augmenting reality. That's
with a bowl of mixed reality for breakfast. It sounds fun.
Well, let's be honest. If VR or AR is going to reach a larger audience, it's going to have words used to describe that are not unfamiliar to non-technical people. So I'm embracing it. I'm just all about mixed reality. Let's do
it. Why don't we jump into the show? You guys started a podcast called the In Reality Podcast. Could you tell us a little bit about that? How it came to be? Why? And all that good stuff?
Well, the real answer is that he and I are both talented individuals with lots of energy. And yep, exactly. Yeah. And we got a little bored one day and we were like, well, why don't we just try doing a podcast? We'll see how it goes. So I'm sure that's a similar story for a lot of people.
Yeah. We're generally tasked with content creation. So Joe makes a lot of videos. I write a lot of things. And I had done some podcasting in the past. And, we're just always looking for different channels that we can sort of explore, different ways that we can attract attention to what we do. And it was sort of an obvious hole in the thing. We were producing text and web pages and video. It was like, well, what else could we do? Definitely do a podcast. And so that's just sort of where it came from. We had no shortage of topics talking about VR and AR. There's always stuff going on. There's always sort of news, and just went from there.
That's cool. Hey, is there any new episodes coming up? I believe you got 14 on season 1 and when season 2.
Yeah, so I feel like season 1 ended and season 2 is about to begin, and we're just looking for the right one to start with. And truthfully, what I just said about how there's always news, the beginning of the year after CES and whatnot, it gets real quiet. There's not a lot of stuff coming out. And as far as wrap up of like things that were unveiled or released at CES, there were, I mean, I don't know if you guys looked at that stuff, but there was on the conservative side, 1 million podcasts and shows and articles about that particular topic. So it was like, we're not going to really add anything here. But shortly is the answer.
Yeah. So something that you mentioned earlier, we're on hiatus largely because we did it in the first place. We were inspired. We're like, let's see how far we can get with this. And then, we took a break over the winter. And I think it's probably going to launch next month, if not this month. And we have a bunch of stuff that we could talk about when there's no news. Like we end up talking about, the holographic projection model of the universe and stuff in a lot of the outtakes. We talk about, no, we do. I think it's like every episode we're like, are we real? Let's have a conversation about this.
Yeah. Well, what did Musk say? Didn't he say that there's a 5% chance that this is actual reality?
My personal feelings on the nature of reality are that it's all a boondoggle in the first place. You can't really tell. There's no, if you're in a virtual reality, the way we discussed previously, where your reality is fully subsumed by some other reality, you can't tell the difference. What's the difference? Are you in virtual reality? It doesn't really matter. So there are a bunch of like philosophical questions that we always ask each other at the end of each episode that are in outtakes, and maybe we'll make a show out of outtakes eventually.
Yeah, yes, a very special in reality podcast.
That would be nifty. Go for it, Brian.
I just wanted to briefly go back to a little bit to the AR, VR, or basically just AR actually at this point. What of the HoloLens, ARKit, and Google? I can't remember Google's new
ARCore.
ARCore, yeah. What of the 3 platforms do you think is, I don't know, I guess the best? Like which platform do you think is?
You're no more Tango. No more Tango.
I would say you're actually asking the wrong guys, because most of what we do at our company is try to figure out how to leverage all of them in concert, right? Like, okay. So the success of any of those platforms is good for us, right? So we try to support all of them simultaneously.
Which is your favorite then?
Which is my favorite? I think I like the HoloLens personally.
It is pretty cool.
I come from Microsoft. That was where I got my start in the industry. So I'm voting for the home team a little bit.
Didn't Intel actually just release something like new glasses or something that
they announced?
Yeah, actually,
they didn't actually. Yeah,
they announced it. Yeah. Oh, what do you know anything about that or what it is offhand?
Well, it's probably going to stick a finger in Magic Leap's eye. I can tell you that.
Oh yeah, Magic Leap. Actually based in Florida, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah, I think they're in Orlando or something.
Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, Orlando.
She's in Orlando.
Yeah.
My place.
Well, it's a shame I was wrong.
Yeah. You're going to see
Vaughn's glasses.
I'll take a quick crack at your question to sort of like separate 2 things out. Because ARKit and ARCore are very, very similar, and HoloLens is kind of something else entirely. In that HoloLens is you're talking about a hardware and software sort of pairing. It's a whole platform. ARKit and then ARCore, which followed, is more of a way to bring this specifically to smartphones. And so, they're like different tools that are built off the same thing. HoloLens is going to provide just a much more sort of immersive experience, but at the same time, you're wearing a thing on your head that means that is what you are doing at that point in time.
Yeah,
you are playing with the HoloLens.
For what we do, HoloLens is largely irrelevant. The idea that consumers are going to go out and purchase, a $3,000 self-contained computing rig that has a bunch of projection tools is just not really feasible. So, if you're talking about like what do we pay attention to, it's ARCore and ARKit.
Yeah.
So
the proliferation of apps, especially in furniture, which is what we're doing so much of these days, that's a real thing. Every furniture company in some way is going to have some variation on place furniture in your house within the next 6 months.
Cool. I think Jenell had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm like, oh, wait, but so for somebody who's like not really super familiar with like these devices and kind of like the history and the future of what's going on in VR and AR, could you kind of give me maybe like a synopsis of like explain it, I guess, to a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, the small history, I guess, like a small kind of short history of AR and VR and where you think it's going.
That's a
small history.
Okay, here I'll start.
Back in 1979.
I'll go for it. So
in the beginning,
for me, let's do like a personal AR and VR history. So for me, the history of AR and I guess VR starts with Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash, which I think was released in the early '90s. Talked about a device, a set-top device that beamed lasers into your eyes that could project, information about the real world and information about a virtual world while you're in it.
That happened to me in the 80s.
Did it? Oh yeah,
Man. Lawnmower Man.
Lawnmower Man. That's right.
When we talked about reality continuums earlier, it's probably safe to say that you can't really find a real start to augmented reality, but I'm pretty sure. Joe has a better actual start date than I do, than a novel written by a sci-fi writer in the 90s.
It's like 2002.
Is that right?
No, there's the actual, like, whatever the papers that underpin a lot of augmented reality, like everything else, go back, I think, into the 70s. And then in the 90s, the sort of foundational work on what we today think of as modern augmented reality is like the SLAM process. Way, regardless, basically the technological underpinnings of it are all 90s or 2000s, and then at the late aughts and into the early teen years here, you have marker-based augmented reality, which you guys may remember, and that actually became fairly common. It involved some kind of paper target, a tracker, which had a code on it, and you could hold your phone over it, and something would show up then in the on top of whatever. Chick-fil-A did them, and so we had a cow running around on the table at some point, and there were lots of ads that they tried them out. But the need for some kind of paper target obviously made that somewhat limiting. We built one for Harley at some point that you laid out a big, like 6-foot long one out on the floor, and then a motorcycle came out, and now that's what ARKit and AR. That's what ARKit and ARCore have sort of replaced. They now just read a plane and they know where the ground is or the tabletop is, and they can stably hold 3D images there. As for where it's going, which is actually the much more fun part of this question. So up until last year, VR had all the heat and AR was sort of under the radar, and then that has now completely flipped. As far as hype goes, now VR is sort of the bastard stepchild, and AR gets all the press everywhere, and Pokemon and yada yada yada. We are definitely about to see 4 different major companies release some form of AR glasses. The Apple patent has been floating around for a couple of days. Google is working on something. Intel has one. Microsoft has promised the next version of the HoloLens by 2019. It definitely feels like 2019, 2020, you're going to see a flood of things that look like traditional black framed glasses that use different strategies to project images onto your retina, in front of your retina, on the glass, etc. And will be light enough to be worn all day. Whether or not people whether or not people adopt this, there's all kinds of industrial uses for this type of thing, mechanics and factories and people who need to see information. Medical is another example. Like all of that is very, very real, and that's all going to really happen. Whether or not we're all running around doing Snapchat with our special glasses that cost $1,000, who knows? I don't know. They'll convince us to buy them. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot
just a matter of time.
B2C opportunities, but there's also a giant amount of B2B opportunities, right? There's so many, like you cited, in an enterprise landscape with doctors being able to have a surgery, looking in, seeing their stuff, and also selling vehicles. If you have your, just a practical thing, having a smart glass to where you could see the road, have information as you're driving by, or
the augmented reality windshield. That's I mean, that's coming for sure.
Heck, going back to the cars, I mean, imagine having a car dealership where you go in and you see the cars all there, push a button, there's different cars. I mean, I can see, it'd be pretty awesome.
We just talked to somebody a little bit ago too about another opportunity for, I think the company was Doghead Simulations, and it was about having it wasn't augmented reality, it was virtual reality, and it was having a meeting kind of space. So if you think about tools like Slack and things like that, having something like that flavor of virtual reality, but having a team meeting in a virtual room.
Yeah, no. So I sort of left VR out of the future, which is a mistake. Over time, I think eventually you're going to just see the two blend together, and you're going to have the level of VR or the level of 3D imagery that you're able to add into somebody's frame can become to the point where reality is mostly gone. If you get what I'm saying, like one unit kind of satisfies both needs. In the short term, I think Mark Zuckerberg would very much like the future of people all getting together in VR that you just described to happen, and it very well may. What we're seeing, like in the real world, and the way people are using the VR things that Marxent has built. I'll use Macy's as an example, which is doing this in New York in Herald Square. If you've ever seen Miracle on 34th Street, this is the Macy's. The famous Macy's store. If you go in there and you want to buy furniture right now, you can do a VR. It's an iPad designed program mixed with VR, right? So if you bring your measurements of your room and like where your windows are and stuff like that, they'll take 10 minutes with you with an iPad. They'll draw it out. They'll put it all down in, and they will create that room pretty much as true to life as you could make it. They'll match colors, the whole thing. Then you put the headset on, and they have put now whatever furniture you've been looking at, and it's all real size. You're viewing it in your space. What we hear back is that people are like, when it gets delivered, it's exactly what I saw. I knew it would fit. I have a weird corner in my room, but I was able to duplicate that exactly. And then the love seat fit exactly as I thought it was going to, that's sort of the real world use for that type of thing right this second.
That's amazing. I need that in my life, like right now. Like so bad.
There's also in Miami. So if you want to drive from Orlando, you could go. There's in Miami's Dadeland Mall. Macy's has the setup there as well. And Joe and I have actually visited one, and it's cool.
Wait, where'd Jenell go? She's gone.
Tripping.
Road trip. That's right, road trip.
Bye, I'm leaving.
I'm checking her in Alligator Alley right now.
Impressive.
I read a interesting statistic on Gartner where they were talking about by 2020, 100 million customers will shop in augmented reality. So these are those opportunities we were talking about, not just the B2B, but the B2C, and we keep citing people putting furniture in the room, but there's also a huge market for people putting makeup on virtually, or there's more kind of outdoors things as well. So if you're hiking, there's the obvious ones that we have on our phones today where you could see the stars and it shows you the star map and things like that. But there's probably a lot more practical opportunities out there for the B2C market.
For sure. I think augmented reality search is an actual growth area that you're going to see explode, and people just don't see it coming yet. And what I mean by that is the power to point your phone at anything and have information come up. So whether that be an address, I'm walking down the street, I want to know what's in this building. I'm looking for the whatever, and it's hidden. I can look at the individual thing. The phone can look at it. It'll just by looking at it, it has a there's a database of places and whatever, and it can then overlay information and be like, oh yeah, this is 317 Smith Street, and the third floor has whatever. And if you want a map to get that goes to where that is, I'll show you directions right to it. Google will probably be, if I had to guess, Google will be ahead of Apple on that, because Google will have access to a much, much larger pool of information, just because of the way Google collects versus the way Google collects from the people who use their stuff. But I mean, that's sort of the next level of this. And I still think that's probably Samsung had in one of their ads, they were touting sort of a version of this already, but it's not ready for prime time yet, but it's coming too.
I'm curious, what do either one of you have personal concerns about this technology and what it will do to society?
I'm the king of personal concerns about what this technology will do to society.
Please, King.
I was wondering what the crown was.
So
rise from your throne.
So he just talked about Google being able to give you information on the third floor of a building that you're basically looking through in mixed reality. So the Tango initiative, I don't know how much you guys know about it, but the idea was actually it was sort of a loss leader for Google getting into your house and mapping individual spaces, right? So one of the things that the technology could do for us personally, Marxent, is, like, let's say you want to design your home, right? And in the future, Google's API has, well, I know the layout of their home because I've collected all of this data via, LiDAR, et cetera, whatever. My concerns about it are largely the same as everybody else's concerns. Are we in a post-privacy society? What does that mean for everybody? Do we just get comfortable with the idea that everything about our lives is available to some statistician at Google? I'm personally not okay with it. I just recently deleted my Facebook. It might be a meaningless gesture, but I went through the hassle of doing it anyway. And if I could
delete each post, because otherwise it's still there.
Oh, you know what? As long as it's out of my life and and consuming useless CPU cycles with me changing or chasing Facebook dopamine all day, it's fine. But the idea that we're just willingly participating in the mapping of society, I'm not equipped to decide whether or not that's morally acceptable. But I definitely have concerns about it. I have concerns about VR and AR.
Post privacy era, wouldn't you say? I mean, we're definitely going down that road as far as giving all of our shit away freely.
Yeah, down the Black Mirror road of the world right now.
Oh, yeah, Black Mirror.
Yeah, just the other day I heard a text from one of my clones on a spaceship, and it was some scary shit.
Stop.
Anybody? Season 4? No one?
Says Callister. Yeah.
No spoilers. No spoilers.
I do my best. I do my best not to consume it. I already have enough technophobia issues.
Yeah,
very frightening.
And the one thing I would say about that was, I think that my conception of how all of our privacy would go away was always that it would be taken, that somebody would do something to force us into this position, and the actual fact is that people will just give it away, and so it doesn't. Like, part of me is scared.
It's free. The stuff is free.
Yeah, it's free, and and it's right now, and I can use it right now. I don't care. I'm not thinking about tomorrow.
So Aldous Huxley and George Orwell were contemporaries, right? They're both writing about statism and dystopias. Orwell's talking about the future that you were just talking about, where somebody takes your freedom away from you. But Huxley was talking about a world where we're just endlessly distracted. And my big concern with augmented reality is that it can be endlessly distracting. Now, it's not any more endlessly distracting than your smartphone. And there are a handful of people who are giving those away. I still have mine. But part of me absolutely wants to make sure that every interaction I have with a human being is as meaningful as possible and that I'm present in everything. But here we are, we're teleconferencing, and that's how we're going to produce the show. So, I think you take it with a grain of salt and you just do your best to avoid, obvious pitfalls.
And me, I'm just
I think they said, what did he say? The best prison is the prison where you can't see the bars.
I can't verify, but probably.
Yeah, I think that was one of his in one of his famous books.
All right. I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna look it up right now. I'm on
Googling that.
Nice.
What I find weird about the Googling it, there's people that are Facebooking it, like that use search and Facebook to find answers to questions like who's the president of such and such country, or how many people are. They're using that instead of Google, which I didn't know people could do that because I've never done that.
Did you see the story floating around about the woman who was she got failed on her final exam or whatever because she talked about the country of Australia, and the professor thought that Australia was a continent, and so she gave her an F, and she had to fight to get the actual grade and convince the professor that Australia was both a continent and a country at the same time. Those are the people who search on Facebook instead of Google.
That's savage.
I didn't even know that was a thing, and that hurts my soul a bit.
Do not use Facebook if you're just looking for random whatever and it doesn't matter. Sure, fine. But if you're actually looking for real information, don't use Facebook. Is not a reliable purveyor of truth, fact,
what do you mean?
Or reasonable information.
I use Reddit. That's really good, right?
You can get lost in that bucket.
You can.
Speaking of Facebook, what do you guys think about that new VR headset that they're shooting out?
New.
It is sort of. It's a price drop and some hardware changes. I think that probably they're going to take a bunch of market share away from Vive. The Vive is just too expensive in order to maintain its position.
That's what I was.
I mean, I don't know. I don't have any further feelings about it. Generally speaking, I prefer the Vive. I like feature-rich VR HMDs. The Oculus just can't compete, but the market that they're looking at doesn't care about whether or not it can compete.
That's what I mean. So since they have that giant price drop, it's going to be a little bit more accessible, and people know the name of Facebook, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I think don't leave out the PlayStation VR, which is actually the largest seller out of the three of those. I know that Marxent uses the Vive. The Vive is sort of the highest quality experience out of all three. Although the Oculus does, they all. I'm not trying to put one over the other or whatever. We generally have found the Vive to be the best. We'll just say that. And so we're excited that there's another version of the Vive is coming. But again, I think a lot of that tech, it's
we're not in the horse race. The horse race is not important to us.
Yeah, and
Gotcha.
I'd love to see new HMDs come out but it just doesn't feel like it. I think that they're all evaluating what they're doing and trying to figure out if they're going about it the right way. And maybe what they're deciding is that headsets aren't the right way, or it's not going to work, or it's always going to be too expensive, or it needs to be shrunk and get cheaper. It's going to be a confluence of those factors.
I think the big miss for a lot of these hardware manufacturers, they're not including enough forward-facing cameras and allowing for augmented reality view inside of the headset additionally. I know that the Vive has a forward-facing camera, could do that sort of thing. I think the reality of the situation is that I don't know. I don't want to say a number of years, but I'm going to say 5 to 10 years. You see a device that does all of it, right? We talked about that earlier. Whether it's a pair of glasses that projects onto your eyes, or whether it's a really cool cyberpunk-looking band that goes around your face. I have no idea. I don't know what the future looks like.
But it's going to be. I wonder too if it's going to be something to where they mix the mixed reality, if you will, with the voice interface. So without the interface, so you basically have Alexa, if you will, that you're speaking to, and you also have the VR. So you're saying, hey, show me this or show me that,
or take me to China. I want to see the Great Wall. Yeah, it could be any number of those things. Eventually, they talk about when things change. I don't think it'll happen all in one shot. It's just going to be all of these things starting to work together to form maybe just a more virtual society in general.
I mean, the real winner always will be the virtual boy.
Nope.
That's right.
No.
First.
What?
I'm getting a headache thinking right now about the virtual boy that was set up in a Walmart 20 years ago.
Everything was red. Everything was red.
What even is this? It's a virtual boy or virtual boy?
Nintendo made a VR headset that was similar to an old DoD project where it would only display wireframe 3D, and it was all in red, and it gave people serious headaches and vertigo.
It was awesome.
Oh, no.
I felt like I was in the Lawnmower Man movie.
I like the glove. The glove was pretty cool.
It's so bad.
Yes, the power.
Oh yeah, I
glove,
just got 2 of them, so I could do it at the same time. It was awesome. Hey, you guys are going to be speaking at something pretty soon, right? What is this? The shop talk?
Oh, so we're not actually speaking at that. Shop Talk is this big show in Las Vegas, and we're going to be out there. But we're doing like I think we're doing invitation only meetings, showing off sort of the thing I just described that we're doing with Macy's, showing off a variation on that to a whole bunch of other retailers and furniture folks. I know that there's a show coming up in Tampa. And now I'm gonna have to look.
I'm already on it, man. I got it.
We're gonna be at. I can't remember if that's the Montgomery Summit. It'll be at the Amalie Arena.
Oh, okay.
That is the Synapse Innovation Summit.
That's right, the Synapse Innovation Conference. Okay, yeah, and so
Beck is speaking there actually.
Yes, and so that's the CEO of Marxent, Beck Biesecker, is going to be speaking at that. And let's see, that's March 28th, 29th. And that's at Amalie Arena. And if you go to Marxent.com and go to our event section, you can find out stuff on that.
Can anyone attend that, or you have to be invited? Or
no, anyone can. It's open to the public. Like Jeff Vinnick is going to be speaking at it, and a bunch of other names that are now, of course, escaping me. But and we're doing shop talk as well, and so that's the upcoming event roster. And again, really, as far as the things Marxent makes, it's more just like you're starting to see it both in the App Store and then just in real life, depending upon where you are. There's VR tech that we helped build right now in Miami, in Paramus, New Jersey, in New York City, in Austin, Texas, and Toll Brothers is doing VR home sales
out
in
Denver,
Colorado, out in Denver, which is actually, that's a whole other thing we haven't talked about at all. That's like super cool, just with how they're, the company like Toll Brothers has a certain number of model homes that they make, and so it's not like it's an endless variation, and they're able to have a couple of homes on site instead of building all of the models, and then using VR, able to show off in different interiors, and then there's a whole customization process that goes with buying a house like that.
You can design and customize it in real time with your salesperson or whatever. And you say it's not infinite, but how many quadrillion possible combinations?
Well, there's only like 8 houses, but then within those 8 houses, there's some insane
27 quadrillion possible combinations of options.
Yeah, of like cabinets and fixtures and floors and paint
I hope
colors.
they're not walking around with the headset on. They could just run into a wall.
No,
that wall's not supposed to be there.
So you sound concerned, but yeah, it actually
make sure nobody's into anything.
Part of designing for VR is designing for people's bodies moving in real life without relation to what's actually going on. So we've learned a lot of lessons actually deploying to Toll and Ashley and all these other places about how people behave in VR and what to expect from them in the future.
Is that like a huge thing to like kind of design something where you don't have someone run into walls or run into like fake appliances or honestly start like throwing up while they're using like a product?
The Vertigo issue is actually something that we've been dealing with from a technical standpoint. We have a really amazing development team up in Dayton who have been really working hard to solve any of those problems. The major problem with Vertigo is frame rate and refresh. If your frame rate's too low, your refresh rate's too low, people can see that flickering between 2 eyes, and it completely disconnects them from their equilibrium. So we've actually solved for that problem by increasing frame rates up above 60 and keeping the refresh rate high.
And I think also I've heard pixel density is a big deal too. If it's too low, it can be a little dizzy.
That's another reason why the Vive is generally better than the Oculus right now. It's going to have better monitor. It's going to have better OLEDs in the next version and stuff like that. Those are all problems that are just going to be beat down by materials technology and further miniaturization.
We spoke a lot about the opportunities within business, but there's also a lot of opportunities for developers and designers within this industry, right?
Yes, absolutely. A lot of the stuff that we build is built on Unity, which up until now has been a game engine. But Unity is very, very interested in taking what they do beyond just the world of gaming. I think they see sort of the virtual mapping of the world as something that they can lend a hand to, because they have, all of the stuff that they've built is great for games, but it's awesome for the real world as well, and so there's a lot of room for growth there.
Well, guys,
I ran out. I'm sorry.
That's perfectly fine. We're gonna have to come back to reality now because we're getting close to the end of the show. So.
Regular reality.
Yeah, regular reality.
My dog began barking, and it really derailed me. I apologize.
Oh no, that's nice textures, man. It's all good.
Yeah, texture brought us back to reality and everything. So we have a few last questions for you. I'm going to go first. Each of us has a question we're going to ask. The first one's a group question. You guys go last. You go first. It's a spotlight question. It's kind of something that you've discovered recently. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be in tech. It could be, you have a cool new pen, or you came up with a new recipe for meatloaf. I don't care. Whatever it is. I love meatloaf. Alton Brown is a really great one. But mine is Windows new Microsoft. Oh, not Microsoft, but the new ARM-based laptops, the Asus Nova Go and the HP NVX2. They're ARM-based Windows computers, and Frederick and our listeners will probably know I'm a big Windows fanboy, even though everything I have is Mac. But I also have a Surface Pro and a Chromebook. I like to mix things up. But these are awesome because they're using ARM technology, and they're always on, 20+ hours battery life. Like a standby time of a month, being able to connect anywhere you are. I like them. And we'll have links to them in the show. Frederick will go nuts. Good.
Oh, okay. Mine's Meatloaf, Alton Brown. So love it. There's this design app that everybody's been talking about on the Twitters and designer news, and that you've probably heard about this. It's called Phase. If you go to phase.com, and one of the things I think they've been getting poo-poo on is that they have this statement that says, meet the last design tool you'll ever need. So basically, it's a design prototyping and everything in one. So you're designing, you're making everything, and then you can actually push to production. Now, I think everything is going to be going to that eventually. And maybe that's kind of a thing to say now.
This is the last one, and nothing else will come along that can replace it.
Kind of like Final Fantasy, right? Though, like they keep putting out these Final Fantasies, but how come it didn't end there? That was the final one. It's Final Fantasy 1, Final Fantasy. So there's these tools that will eventually do this to where you'll probably open up Sketch, 117. And it will put up the exact application, like you build the whole application in. But everything is going to go that way. This is probably maybe the third or fifth one that's doing something like this. I don't know. I find it interesting, but there'll be a lot of conversation around that. Jenell?
So I actually found this really, really cool website called tweetsnippet.com. And it is a curation of all of the developer kind of tidbits that you get on Twitter, but all in one site so that you don't have to take screenshots every time of like, I forgot that brew cleanup exists, right? So pretty cool stuff. So it makes my soul smile, and now I'm addicted to it, and that's like the first thing I go to on the internet now.
What's it called?
It's called tweetsnippet.com.
Did you get that, Brian?
Cool.
Nice. All right, hey Joe, your turn.
Oh, I'm completely unprepared. All right, so
not you, the other Joe.
The other Joe. Okay,
I'm going to the other Joe. Come on, Joe, keep up.
I'm totally prepared. Not at all. So I'm just gonna throw this out because I downloaded it in like the last week, and it's old, and everybody will probably be like, "Oh, we had that already," and whatever. But I finally got Dark Sky on my phone. It's a weather app. If anybody doesn't know what this is, it cost $3.99 when I purchased it. Up until now, I've just used free ones that from your local TV station. It's actually way better. I was really surprised that I didn't realize that I was missing so much of what was possible in a weather app. Number one, it tells you pretty much exactly how long until it rains wherever you're standing, which I was like, yeah, bullshit, come on. And then we had my kid's birthday party last weekend, and it was like, it's going to rain in 4 minutes. And I was like, all right, I'll move some shit inside. And 4 minutes later, it rained. Not a lot, but it did. It actually rained. So, so Dark Sky, I highly recommend it. And I don't know why it took me this long to get it, because I have a lot of other weather apps and generally like them. But this one seems pretty great.
I feel like the name is kind of creepy, especially when it's so accurate. It's like Dark Sky.
Yeah, well, they know. They know.
But it's a great app, yeah. All right, hey, Joe, your turn, Joe.
So my discovery is also old, and everybody else already knows about it. But Apex Launcher combined with Tasker on Android. So my background is in UI UX, and I always hate the user interfaces for phones. Every phone has a terrible phone user interface. So Apex and Tasker, you can combine the two to completely change the visual layout of your Android device without rooting it, which is handy. And Tasker also lets you create a bunch of conditions that you would never even dream of making. You could have a specific app launch on your phone at a given point in time. You can have triggers like voice triggers for launching apps, or voice triggers for entering pieces into, like, you need a budget or whatever. So it's automated a whole bunch of different things that I do on my phone on a regular basis.
That sounds amazing.
It takes a lot of like screwing around with it to get it where you want, but between me and Andrea, who is my partner, we have basically done incredible weird things to our phones.
Huh. All right, that's a good one to try.
Yep.
Like that. All right, well, hey, my question for you guys is, and I love asking everybody this, if you weren't doing what you do now and you could not be around a computer, what would you be doing? You first, Joe.
That's super easy. I would be painting landscapes in the forest. It's really straightforward.
Boom, landscapes, forest. Joe.
So graffiti? Okay.
No, it would be oil paint. It would be oil paint.
Oil paint, yeah. I can't do canvas. Or not canvas. What is not oils, but
acrylic?
Acrylic, thank you.
Finger.
Joe.
I'd
be behind fences all day.
No, I would be musician. I would be playing the guitar somewhere.
Wow.
So you play a little bit?
I do play a little bit. I actually, before this, was at band practice for like 4 hours. So I can't believe I could actually hear the entirety of this conversation.
Nice.
The ringing is that my ear is actually ringing.
Instrumental guitar.
It's an instrumental rock band, I would say. Garage band, something like that. Huge. We are one of my favorite things to talk about is that I love being in a band where there's no pressure for me, because I'm not trying. I'm 42. I got kids. I've got whatever. I'm not going to the Grammys. Like, that's not going to happen. I do it because I love it, and I play with a really great group of dudes, and we go and we make noise, and we really like it. We think it's pretty good. The band is called Zero Babies. You can look it up on Facebook, the evil Facebook I was talking about before, but I have a fan page, of course. We do lives on there every once in a while. That's when I talked earlier about content channels and how this year's hot thing for Joe and I do is going to be Facebook Live events. They're going to go live because Facebook really wants to push it, and it's fun. My band goes live pretty regularly. As far as through the app and everything, it works great. It's a lot of fun, and we have a very small group of devoted followers who will actually watch and like post comments and talk about it and stuff. So it's really great.
Oh, that's cool. All right, awesome.
I didn't know we were plugging ourselves, Joe. Jeez. This is all about plugging, isn't it?
Exactly.
All right, fine. Well, in that case, visit thejoejohnson.com.
Yeah.
Thank you. There we go. Exactly.
If you want to see sci-fi landscapes or weird cubist family portraits, it's all there.
Joe's an amazingly talented artist, by the way. I'm just going to throw that out there. Amazingly talented. He undersells it.
Bro. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Jenell,
see, we do like each other.
Jenell, you got a question?
Okay, mine is a question. So, say with nonsense.
Give you a nonsense answer.
Yes, perfect. So, I've been playing this game called Super Fight, which really terrible things against also really terrible things. So, I would like to know, in your opinion, who would win between in a fight. So the first contestant is Canada. It's 3 stories tall, and it shoots acid. versus Kong, who has a magical unicorn and can fly, but only when no one's looking?
I know my answer would be super easy, but you guys?
Considering I only heard half of the prompt, I'm gonna go with Canada. Hang on. I'm gonna go with Canada, 3 feet tall, versus Kong. All right, that's what I went with.
And who's gonna win?
So what's amazing
I
is,
told you already.
Joe, you broke up for me exactly in the same places that Jenell broke up for me. So I'm going to say what Joe said. What Joe said seems like the right answer.
Wasn't talking during those segments.
He was being sarcastic.
Oh,
Okay, so then I will rephrase the question.
Hey, we got to see the joke. We got to see the physical joke.
I will rephrase it then.
That was awesome.
So
I'm gonna
it's
high five
Canada,
myself.
3 stories tall. So it's Canada, 3 stories tall, and it shoots acid.
Okay.
All right. So that's the first contestant. The second one is King Kong. What?
King Kong,
Oh,
but only
it's
smaller.
King Kong.
Like a message.
Wait.
What is going on?
With a
Can I bet
magical
on Godzilla?
unicorn.
I'd like to bet on Godzilla.
I'm done.
That's the answer to that question. It's
Well,
Godzilla.
Kong is actually a unicorn, so
I'm gonna put my money on streaming via Ethernet instead of Wi-Fi. That's where my money is.
That's a good one. All right. Well, hey, guys, any final words? We're getting to the end. Anything that you want to tell people before we go?
words of wisdom.
Words of wisdom, inspiration, anything from a fortune cookie?
I would say my words of wisdom would be use virtual reality sparingly and try to be present when you're not in it. That's all.
Joe?
Yeah, put the phone down. Which if my wife was here right now, she's inside, but she would like come running out and be like, "Yes, put the damn phone down." When you're talking to other people, put your phones down. Don't try not to. You want to check. And I have it's an Apple Watch too, so I'm just getting bombarded with notifications all the time.
This is a good time to tell you that every time you get a notification on your stupid Apple Watch and you pay attention to it instead of what we're talking about, I want to slap you in the mouth.
Yes, I know. You start to you do this little motion. It's like, yeah, see, like we're talking right now. We're talking. Oh, I'm back. Yep. I'm back. No, that was very quick. I got a Gmail that just happened. No, so that's don't do that. Don't do that. Eye contact, people. Eye contact.
Yeah, actual authentic human interaction. Weird concept. So, hey, and the last thing is, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you guys?
Oh, you can just email me whenever you want. joej@marxent.com. Knock it out. You'll hit the spam filter eventually.
And I'm Joe B at Marxent.com. And we have Marxent's website is Marxent.com. Where Marxent is on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Marxent. We have a very active Twitter account.
I'm sure there's
LinkedIn
a Pinterest
as well.
account somewhere.
There is a Pinterest account, but don't talk about it out loud because I have to put something on it. We'll make a pin board soon. But then we also have an Instagram that we don't really update because Instagram makes it really hard for you to update not from a phone. I'm just keeping it real. That's the truth. But so yeah, all of those places you can find us and we respond and say hi and whatnot.
Yeah, we'll talk about anything.
All right, and does the podcast have a website too?
No. So the podcast had a SoundCloud account. We spawned out to Stitcher, iTunes, etc. If you want to talk about the podcast, just email either one of us, and then we'll have a fight about it in the office. It'll be great.
Nice fights and mouth slapping. I love it.
Yeah.
Maybe you could post that on online somewhere. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, hey man, we're done. So thank you, Joes. We really appreciate you coming on the show. And whoa, there we go. And sharing.
Whoa, that is a send-off. All right.
It's our pleasure. It's at least my pleasure.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good show. Good information. And thanks for joining us.
All right. I'm hanging up now. Bye.
All right. Bye, guys.
See ya.